KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tateosian, 90.7 KFSR.
Welcome to another edition of the Central Valley Ledger. We're recording out of the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative, Fresno and Clovis. Our guest this week is going to talk a little bit about his new book. He has had an interesting experience in life from Syria to Italy to Syria to the United States. He lives here in Fresno now. I'd like to introduce Wahi Kachichyan. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So before we talk about your book, which is about the Armenian genocide, we have a big Armenian population here in Fresno.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you outside of the studio, and I didn't realize that you at some point in your life lived in Italy.
Yes. Now, I was born in Syria, and then at the age of 12, I went, or it would be, I would say my father has decided to send me to Italy, where at the time the Mechitarians, the Armenian Catholic monks in Venice, at the time they had an Armenian school called Collegio Armeno. So all the students were basically from the Middle East. So I was lucky enough, at the time the principal of that school was my uncle, who was a member of that congregation of the Mechitarians, who by the way passed away in November. He became afterwards an archbishop of the Catholic Church.
Sorry to hear about that. I remember hearing about the passing through social media or something like that. So thank you for telling the backstory on that. So you're from Syria and then you go to Italy. Talk about that experience.
Yes. Now, we Armenians, we do have a history of endless migrations. So when I speak with people, with friends, I tell them that we keep migrating from a state another state and keep doing that and keep doing that. And this goes forward from historically. Anyway, my, let's say, first step was Italy. And then when I was done with my studies back in 1998, I went back to Syria, where I stayed for 3-4 years. And then in 99, from 98 to 99, I went to the United Arab Emirates. And then I went back to Syria. And then I went to live in Damascus. And then in 2016, went back to Kesab. So this is a typical life of an Armenian family, back and forth from a state, from a country to another.
After the genocide, we saw a lot of this kind of thing. But so Kesab, I want you to talk a little bit more about Kesab because we in Fresno have a small population from the village of Kesab.
Yes.
Tell us where Kesab is, a little bit about life in Kesab.
Now, we have had in history 4 kingdoms. I mean, 4 Armenian statehoods that have had very short existence. So the last one we had, before the one of 1918, it was the Kingdom of Cilicia, Giligia. Kesab was part of that kingdom, which had fallen in 1375. So since then, we lived without statehood. We were everywhere in the Middle East at the time. So Kesab basically is the last village of the lost state of the Kingdom of Cilicia.
Which Cilicia was the place the Crusaders went during the Crusades and rested and ate and pit stopped, correct?
Yeah. I mean, what we can read in history is that the Crusades came to the Middle East basically to save the Holy Land from the invasions of the Parthians, Persians, and later of the Arabs, of the Muslims. The Armenians have tried to get some advantage of the presence of the Christian crusaders in the Middle East. And some historians would say that had they aided us, helped us at the time, our kingdom of Cilicia wouldn't have fallen. I don't know, history is what it is, you know, we are just analyzing.
Yeah.
We cannot change anything of the past.
A lot of ifs, ands, or
exactly,
buts.
yes.
Things would have been different. Where did you learn English? Because, you know, from Syria to
Yes.
to Italy to United Arab Emirates, these aren't really English speaking. I mean, they speak English there, but
Yeah.
primarily English is not their language.
Yeah. Yes. That's our destiny. I mean, when we don't have a statehood to protect us, to embrace us, so we have to be somewhere in the world. So being born in Syria, basically I speak Armenian because I was born to an Armenian family. And then at the time I used to speak some Arabic because Syria is a Muslim country. Officially it's a Muslim country. So Arabic is the official language. And then I went to Italy, as I said earlier, and I had to learn Italian. And at the time, in that Collegio Armeno of the Mkhitaryan priests, there was a time we used to learn 4 languages.
Wow.
Okay? Armenian, Italian, English, and French. And for a certain time, for 3 years, we had a principal of the school, Father Levon Zekian, now is an archbishop of the Armenian church. He added a 5th language, which is Karapar, the old Armenian,
wow.
Ancient Armenian, which is basically the language used in the church.
Equivalent to like English that Shakespeare would talk compared to modern day English.
If you want, equivalent to the Old Greek and Latin,
okay,
in respect of the European languages. So we had to learn some Karapar too. And then my English at the time was not that much developed, okay? But when we left Syria in 2011 because of the war, so when I came to the United States, the first thing that I had to do, all of us have to do, is learning and improving that language, because basically you're gonna live in this country. So we are not afraid. Should you or me go and live in Japan, I'm sure we're gonna learn Japanese too. So it's destiny.
Something you had to do.
We have to.
So Kesab was in the news not too long ago again.
Exactly.
And Fresno had a little group of people that brought attention to the area.
Yes.
There was another slaughter in Kesab.
Exactly. Now, let me give you a historic background of Kesab very shortly. Prior to the genocide of 1915, the Kesabsis were somewhere about 6,000 people. Genocide has killed 2,000 of them.
Okay.
So let's say that that was the first. Actually, in 1909, during the Adana massacres, Kesab has had its share on that. Okay. Later in 1947, we had an immigration into Armenia. That's unusual because historically we always have had immigrations outside Armenia. So paradoxically, we had an immigration into Armenia.
Okay.
At the time, 2,000 Kesabtsis, which were exactly the half of that population, immigrated into Armenia. So there were left 2,000 people.
Wow.
And in the academic year 1911-1912, there were 1,100 students in the schools of Kesab. That's a huge number.
Wow.
100 years ago. Now, the last step, when we thought that, Turks are not anymore our enemies, or at least they do not consider us enemies anymore, so we failed in our judgment again and again and again, okay? So basically, taking advantage of the war in Syria, it reminds me the genocide practices, okay? Death squads, okay?
Were sent to Kesab.
Were sent to Kesab. Now Kesab is right on the border, bordering with Turkey, I mean. So they sent like 4,000 mercenaries, commercial terrorists, however you want to call them, and they attacked our houses. They stationed there for 3 months. So they were left enough time to loot everything. So basically, it's a mini genocide.
Do you personally, or anybody from Fresno that you know of, that has relatives back that were impacted?
Okay, everybody got impacted. At the time, I had a brother in there with his family and my mother. Okay, so basically, all the Kesabsis could barely escape that a new genocide. Okay, now. Genocide is a continuous event in our lives. But the thing is that we kept forgetting, okay? Every 10, 15 years, there is a kind of discussion in the communities. As we were in Kesab, we were telling each other, oh, you know what? Current Turks, they don't have any fault. Okay, there was something wrong that their forerunners did to our grandparents, Basically, we were wrong in our judgment again. So, which means that that there is an ideology called pan-Turkism or pan-Turanism, okay? That many times we have thought that it belongs to the past, but absolutely no. It is so vital. It is alive in the memory of the Turks, and they keep exterminating us based on that ideology. So Kesab, basically, back to the events of Kesab. Now everybody went back to Kesab, but unfortunately they have burned, I think, 3 out of the 7 churches that we still have in Kesab. They have looted all the houses, my house included. They have desecrated the cemeteries. For example, my father's grave too, okay? They were looking for gold and that kind of stuff, so they came very organized. They came with metal detectors. We have, for example, the graves of some ecclesiastical figures, that for many reasons they were buried in Kesab. So all the tombs of the gravestones were basically digged out again.
See, and it's hard for us to imagine in our protected life here in Fresno that people have relatives that that we know,
yeah,
whose family members' graves were taken out and looted. I mean, see, it's so different than what we're used to that sometimes some people say, oh, no, it can't happen that way.
Exactly. Unfortunately, it is happening, and we shouldn't be blaming the Turks only. We should blame ourselves also and mainly, because we forget very easily. But the Turk is in there, the Turk that now is occupying our historic Armenia, also called Western Armenia. He's there and he's chasing us and he's watching us. And he keeps living in the memory of his ancestors, of the Ottoman Turks. And so that ideology, unfortunately, is still alive.
And the Turkish government has not recognized the Armenian genocide?
Obviously.
So tell us about your book.
Actually, my book came out, it was an old dream, At the end, I have decided to write down what I have understood about genocide. because my idea was and is still that I do respect our Armenian experts on the Armenian genocide. There are a lot of books in English and in other languages, treating this topic of the genocide. But my idea is that most of these books were written from experts for experts, to be written and to be read from other experts. So when I get in touch with people, be that in the Middle East or in Italy or in the United States, I realize that people are asking me basically at the beginning the same questions. Armenian, oh, are you Christians? That's the first question. So this question, along with others, bring me to understand that these people, they do really know very little about Armenians. So here's the thing. Should our activity be limited to the experts, okay? They are basically dialoguing with each other, okay, upon who can write a more difficult book using more difficult terminology. I have read many books on the Armenian genocide, and believe me, some of them are really, you cannot understand it. You have to be an expert to understand it. So my attempt is to put a book on the market that is accessible, that is readable, that is accessible not to the experts, but to the averagely educated American people, Western people.
But here you are in Fresno, California. Why even go this? Why even do this? Why even go through writing it and telling the story? It's been told. What was inside of you that made you want to do this?
Okay, now, as far as I can understand, genocide, we think everybody knows about genocide, but unfortunately, few people know about genocide. Secondly, we have to present genocide today in modern terms, in a new terminology, in a new approach. So I have chosen a number of topics, subjects, based on that to introduce genocide. I mean, an overall guide to understanding genocide. So I speak about the Armenian language, about the Turks, about the Armenian church, what are the major differences between the Catholics, the Armenian Protestants, our national church, why we do have 4 different ecclesiastical seats. We have Echmiadzin, we have Antelias, and then we have Constantinople, Istanbul, and then we have Jerusalem. Okay, so I have tried to give the lecture a general idea, a comprehensive idea of genocide, but within a historic collocation. So my hope is that whoever would like to read this book, he's going to understand genocide, along with understanding some of Armenian history. So that was the original idea. And there is another thing here. Genocide was carried out by the young Turks, okay?
Which you're referring to the young Turkish regime that took power back in like 1915 time.
1908, to be exact. Okay, so I mean, there is a basic question we have to ask. What is a genocide project? It's a radical, it's an extraordinary project, right? So the Turks at the time have decided to implement a new genocide, because many people think that 1915 was a genocide. So what I'm saying in my book, that wasn't a genocide. That was the last of a series of a number of genocides which were being implemented against the Armenian people since the establishment of that bloody empire called the Ottoman Empire. which was established in 1299. Basically, this is almost 700 years. The Turks, the Ottomans before and the Turks, they are chasing us. They have conceived a plan of extermination of the Armenian people still in the 14th century. We are not aware of that. We think that something happened in 1915 and you know, we underwent genocide. No, genocide is deeply rooted in the pan-Turkic, pan-Turanic ideology, which, by the way, it is the longest living ideology ever. I mean, let's compare our genocide with other genocides. The Holocaust, I mean, the Hitler regime, the Nazis, they do not exist anymore. That ideology was beaten, right? Number one. Number two, let's say the genocide of the Hutu and the Utsi back in 94, okay? So that regime, that doesn't exist anymore. Cambodia, the regime of the Khmer Rouge, now today doesn't exist anymore. Back to the Armenian genocide, we have had the regime change from Ottoman Turkey to modern Turkey, the Republic of Turkey, the Democratic Republic of Turkey. But they are implementing the same ideology of their forerunners. So this is radical Islam, okay? We have been dealing with radical Islam since the establishment of that bloody empire.
So, and I want to jump in and I just want to say, it's not like you're painting the brush that all of Islam or all of Turks are this way. What you're saying is that there is a certain segment of each, so that, and because during the genocide, during these times, there were brave Turks, and there were Muslims that did help the Armenians. So I just want to make sure that that goes out there so that people don't understand that you're just painting this brush of all Islam or all Turks.
Absolutely.
You're not saying that. You're saying that there's just a segment, correct?
Let me explain you. Let's divide Muslims in three categories, right? Radical Islam, moderate Islam, conservative Islam. Armenia was invaded in the 7th to 9th century. We lived as a state, Armenia, under Arab invasion for 200 years. So that was moderate Islam. They did not suppress the Armenian church. They left us live. They gave us everything. Now today in Armenia you have inscriptions on stones or manuscripts in the Madena Taranovech Miazin, okay?
Which is the library, the National Library.
Which is the National Library of Armenia, okay? Speaking out about the coexistence of Muslim Arabs at the time with Armenia. That's number one. Number two, during the Battle of Avarir, Vartan Mamigonian and that war against the Zoroastrian Iran, at the time Persia, they have tried to impose Zoroastrian religion on us. So through that war, military, we lost that war, but our historians tell us that it was a moral victory in the sense that by that war, though we lost it, but we have shown some resistance to them, telling them, hey, we are Christians, okay, we are not gonna become Zoroastrians, whatever. Okay, that was it. So the Persians did not try to exterminate us. The Arabs, Muslim Arabs, did not ever try to eliminate us. But Turkish radical Islam did it, and this is going on from the 14th century. Here is the difference between the three, okay? Now, conservative Islam, we can coexist with them. With moderate Islam, we can coexist with them. And you have examples in the Middle East. You have a community in the United Arab Emirates, in Qatar. Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria. So it is coexistence, right? We are able, and they are allowing us to coexist with them.
You're saying just radical,
Exactly.
the radical Islam,
Yeah.
the radical Turkish Islam is what is causing the issues.
As far as I know, in my studies, I could find that the most dangerous, the most persistent, the most resilient radical Islam is the Turkish.
Radical
And
Islam.
unfortunately, the Turkish record, Ottoman Turkish record, it's full of extermination of different minorities. Basically, the minorities of the Middle East got exterminated by Turkey, by the Ottoman Empire. We are not the only victims, okay?
Yeah.
They have tried to exterminate the Greeks, Assyrians, Chaldeans, Armenians, Alevis, Kurds. They have tried to exterminate even anti-Islamist radical Islam, Turkification, rejecting Muslim minorities.
Interesting.
Okay? Now, we are Christians. Say we are rejecting Turkification or Islamification, and they exterminate us. That's fine. Let's justify it. But how about another Muslim group which rejects Turkification, like the Alevis or the Kurds? So here is radical Islam. They are going to exterminate them.
So it wasn't just necessarily against Christians, it was amongst different minorities, including Muslims.
Yes.
You know, we are at a time this week on the program. We can talk to you for a longer time about this topic, but you have a book out. Congratulations on your book being published from Fresno. You've done a lot of, traveling around the world. So thank you for being our guest.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. You've been listening to 90.7 FM KFSR Fresno and to the CMAC channels, Comcast 93 and AT&T 99. We hope you enjoyed the program. Thank you to our volunteer crew that made this production and every part of that production possible. We couldn't do it without you. Tune in next week to a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.